And I think a lot of AGS parents can relate to this, that we didn't sleep a lot. Leo would not sleep without being held. He would just cry. I mean, he cried unless you were holding him.
I love how you said to not make moms feel alone, because immediately what I started doing without maybe realizing it was very subconscious at the beginning, is I started unfollowing some Instagram typical mom influencers. It made me sad because I knew my life was completely different.
That dialogue going on in the background that is making them feel like they're just not doing enough, like they're never, doing enough therapies, never doing enough for their child, help their child, and they have fears and anxieties, right?
Hello, ATAs, allies, and caregivers. You're listening to our podcast, The Rare Advocates, a caregiver-worthy and rare disease podcast brought to you by Aicardi Goutieres Syndrome, Advocacy Association, where we update you with the latest news, conversations around Aicardi Goutieres Syndrome and rare diseases. My name is Betty, and I'm a mom volunteer, producer, and marketing director. But most importantly, my youngest one, Noah, was diagnosed with Aicardi Goutieres Syndrome. The stories you're about to hear are close to my heart, and the learnings are very beneficial to me, and I hope they're beneficial to you as well. And don't forget to join the conversation. We're now on all social media platforms, so be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you're listening to us from. This helps other families and caregivers find our podcast. We're thankful you're here, and we hope we can help you in this journey. Now let's take a brief moment and thank our podcast sponsor, Biogen. We extend our sincere gratitude to our valued sponsor for their generous support, enhancing the listener experience and helping us advocate for those affected with Aicardi Goutieres Syndrome. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to bring our special guest on the screen with me. Her name is Lauren Lowery. Hi, Lauren. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I am so glad we finally get to sit down today, because I've been following Lauren for a while. When I became an Aicardi Goutieres Syndrome mom, immediately you start joining this community and you start seeing other Instagram accounts and Facebook profiles of different parents, and you start bonding with them. And Lauren, your Instagram account really stood out to me. So can you tell me more about your Instagram account so everyone knows a little bit more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know where to start on that. So my Instagram account started originally as just a place to connect with other moms, kind of like you said, just to find that community that didn't really exist all of a sudden. Whenever Leo was diagnosed, we definitely didn't know anybody that was going through anything like we were, right? So Instagram just started to be the place that we could share our stories and we could feel less alone.
Yes. So let's really start from the beginning. When was Leo diagnosed? And he's your only son right now, am I correct?
Yeah, and then I have a daughter.
Oh, you have a daughter. See,
Yes.
Didn't know that about you. So please tell me a little bit about your family and when Leo was diagnosed.
Yeah. So Leo was diagnosed in end of 2016. Okay. So he was about a year old. They're about to turn a year old. And we were early onset. So we knew right from the beginning, from the first couple of weeks, that something was going on. We just didn't really know what it was. We didn't know how serious it was. The doctors kind of gave us, oh, there's hope. He'll catch up. He'll be fine. It's probably nothing. But then the more tests they did, the more, MRIs, things like that, the more they kind of started to realize that, let's maybe go to genetic testing and let's figure out what's going on. So,
is Leo your first or second?
He is my first, and then we adopted a little girl who is a year younger than him. We adopted her in 2021.
Wow, and it's so hard, Leo being your first and not knowing as a new parent what was going on. So how did that feel like?
it was so scary because we did get a lot of medical professionals telling us, oh, you're just worried new parents. They told us nothing was wrong. And my husband, he really was the one who advocated very strongly for Leo. That first week after I gave birth, he was very adamant that no, this isn't right. And he just kept pushing, and we switched hospitals and just made sure we were heard.
Yes, and you are joining us from Oklahoma, and I really like to remind our audience where you're at, because oftentimes in the United States, it just feels like every state varies so much. And I think that's just important to know that not only Aicardi Goutieres Syndrome has a wide spectrum, but our experiences can also be very different. And you mentioned something that's similar to mine, which is early onset, but you knew, you had that gut feeling that something was going on. And my baby Noah, who was diagnosed, was my second kid, and I was also not heard. It was really hard to advocate. So you started advocating, and then you finally received diagnosis around a year later. So immediately you knew something was wrong, and it took a whole year, more or less?
Almost, yeah. It took about 9 months, and then, a couple months we ended up doing a full genome sequencing, right, to get it figured out, because he did not present like the normal AGS, literature was saying. So I think that's part of it at the time. But yeah, so it was almost a full year.
Yes. And during that year, is that when you first started sharing your story, or did it take you a little while to get there?
It took me a while. That first year was very hard, and the second year was very hard. And I think a lot of AGS parents can relate to this, that we didn't sleep a lot. Leo would not sleep without being held. He would just cry. I mean, he cried unless you were holding him. So those first couple of years were very, very rough. And I started blogging. I want to say Leo was probably about 2 years old. And it just was a way to just get my story out. It was very healing. It was very just, I don't know. It let me say what I needed to say. And it let me put it out there and get it out of my head. And it just kind of turned into more.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, especially because I want to say you are the first parent that has actually shared a very similar story, not only in the sense that it took a little while to get a whole lot while to get the diagnosis, and in parent time, it just seems forever. And my son also could not stop crying at night, and he had to be held. And it just seemed that he was wide more awake during the nights. And I'm 100% sure, and I would like to share this article with everyone, and I'll put the link down below, that the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia did come out with an early signs of leukodystrophy published article, and the number one is crying, irritability, and crying at night. When I read that article, Lauren, I don't know if you've seen it go around.
I haven't.
It came out in April, so it hasn't been that long. I cried. I cried because no one believed us. So I can't imagine. So you started processing, writing everything down, and where does that put it? Around what year is this?
Oh no. I want to say probably 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
And
maybe around there. I'm not 100% positive on that.
It's okay. It's okay. I remember seeing a few blog posts though. You did blogging for a little while. So as a mom, that was healing, but then what did that develop to? What was next for you as a mom and your journey with Leo?
Yeah. As I kept blogging and I kept writing, and a lot of the things I wrote, I actually never even put out because I was kind of doing it more just for myself. It kind of just became something that, like I said, is very healing for me. It allowed me to process what was going on. And so I started to notice that, and I started to notice how much better it made me feel. And I started to then kind of realize, like, man, I don't know if this is normal. What I was considering postpartum and all of that, it kind of extended for years. I'm like, I'm not sure postpartum can really be 2 or 3 years long, right? So it just kind of gave me that wake-up call that I needed to say, like, hey, this isn't normal. You have to do something. You need to do something, because I was not showing up. I was always frustrated. I was not showing up as my best self, like not even an okay self. I was always frustrated. I was definitely like stress eating all the time. I was just very tired, always exhausted. And I literally just never had any idea, what I should do or anything. But my sister recommended a podcast, and just long story short, down the rabbit hole, I discovered life coaching, which still looking back, I'm like, that is crazy. No one has, what's a life coach? Like, that's something Oprah has. That's just insanity. But what this podcast was teaching was just so helpful, more than I'd ever seen before. Something that really just helped me more than therapy, more than, the antidepressants. None of that stuff helped like this. Just podcast, just listening to it helped.
Yes. And you said something very relatable is, it was different in therapy, but it was very healing. And that just says a lot, because I think everyone is going to find whatever is going to be healing for them. And the fact that you found it, maybe it's just like a calling, like little signs there, because to an extent, maybe back in the day, a blog was considered almost equivalent to a podcast, because you are sharing stories, right? And now you just have it in audio, it's just a different medium. And I love the title of your podcast. So will you share to the audience the title of your podcast?
Yes, Overcome the Overwhelm.
Okay. And so what is,
technically?
Yes, I was about to say that. So what's the mission of the podcast, even though the title is perfect to explain things?
And it really is just more than overwhelm, though. The mission of the podcast is to just help make life easier for special needs moms, to help make it just a little bit better, a little bit more manageable, to let moms know that they're not alone, and just to give them a resource to provide help.
I love how you said to not make moms feel alone, because immediately what I started doing without maybe realizing it was very subconscious at the beginning, is I started unfollowing some Instagram typical mom influencers. It made me sad, because I knew my life was completely different. And I started seeking for more relatable content. Was it something similar for you, that's what you wanted to share, exactly what you're saying, that you wanted to just show the relatable piece of a rare mom?
Yes, very much the same, because I wanted, like I said, I found life coaching and thought work and, emotional regulation. I found all of that through a podcast. The podcast was not relatable. It was not for moms like us at all. It was for physicians. Like, it made no sense, right? But I just kept looking. I was like, there has to be something that can help moms like me. And it just wasn't there. And yeah, it's very similar. I just kind of had to become what I was trying to find.
Yes. One of the things I love about podcasting is that we can listen to it on the go. And as a rare mom, it's unexpected. Our day to day, we hope they'll be very similar, but sometimes we're thrown different obstacles, and our kids may present a new symptom or may have an off day. And so I think this is wonderful. And then not only do you have a podcast, but you mentioned life coaching. Can you share a little bit more about what that entails and how maybe a rare parent or caregiver may benefit from that?
Yeah. So like I said, I stumbled into the life coaching world, and it's something I never expected to be a part of that. Like, that was never my career path that I chose at all. But it is something that, it gives you the tools. It's more every day, like your day-to-day stuff. I think therapy is a wonderful thing. I think that if if antidepressants or, medications, if that's something you need, absolutely, if that is what helps. But then there's also this level of, the day-to-day that those things don't always address. And that day-to-day, it's, the constant thoughts going on in our brains that are adding to our stress, that are, adding to our mom guilt and us feeling overwhelmed. And our thoughts are so, so incredibly powerful, but they receive so little of our attention. But they really are what are driving all of our emotions and all of our actions or inactions. And yeah, now I forgot what your question was, but yeah, that is kind of, in a nutshell, what I help moms do, is really get a grasp on what's going on in their brains, right? What is going on? What is that story they have, that kind of that dialogue going on in the background that is making them feel like they're just not doing enough, like they're never, doing enough therapies, never doing enough for their child, help their child, and they have fears and anxieties, right? I help them manage that. I help them change those thought processes that aren't serving them.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That is, I'm sure many of our audiences hear this and they're like, yes, that's exactly what's going on, because it is so relatable, and it's hard to find those resources that really speak to the parents, the caregivers, and like you said, and not necessarily just like the health professionals out there. And I find you very inspiring, because I get besides the podcast that I'm volunteering for my son and for our kids, everything else in my life I try to keep very private now since the diagnosis. So I find it very inspiring, that you're putting yourself out there and helping others. So where do you find that energy? Like, how do you do it? I want to learn how you do it, because I think it's truly inspirational and wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Of course.
And, I do it like everybody else. I have bad days. I definitely have bad days. I even shared, on this week's podcast, as we're recording this, I shared a story about how last week Leo's G-tube completely just fell out, and is when we're on our way to go pick up my daughter, and just, all this craziness. So like, I still have crazy days. I still have bad days. I still have all those things happening. But I have gotten really good at practicing what I teach. And I can really say that does help me really keep things kind of in check and keep myself in check. And, I'm not positive all the time. This isn't toxic positivity and good vibes only. We don't do that. But I can get really, on those bad days, I have got to a place where I can stop myself and I can kind of redirect where my brain's going. I can be there for myself. I can offer myself grace, and then I can move forward instead of just kind of letting it run my whole day.
Yes. So if you could share just, a quick, like, take it out of your pocket and, gift us a tool that maybe parents, after listening to this podcast, or caregivers can use to plug themselves in. I don't know if it's to ground themselves or recharge. What piece of advice or tool would you give us?
Oh, I have so many.
Just one. Everyone else is going to have to tune into your services. But I would love for us to leave this podcast with that. I hate to say it, tangible, but to an extent, because you're providing us this gift, tangible tool.
Yeah. Well, I can say that I provide a lot of different tools for free, because I know, there's just, like I said, there's a million different ways to help. But getting organized and having like a medical binder. So that is something that I offer for free, that you can go get the PDF. And I just started using it because it helped keep me organized with all of Leo's stuff, because I was missing appointments. I was always late and forgetting things because I was trying to keep all of it mentally, I was trying to keep track of it all up in my head and just trying to remember everything. And I couldn't do it. So I had to create a system. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to pretty this up, make it look a little nicer. And I'm just going to share it with everybody else. So there's that. And then as far as like thought work, probably the best tool I could say that's just the quickest, easiest is writing out your thoughts, or writing out even just not necessarily a gratitude list, but a things I appreciate list. Because sometimes it's hard to find gratitude. Sometimes it's easier to say, you know what? I appreciate that my coffee wasn't stone cold this morning. And just finding those little moments of joy that necessarily it's not like, oh, I am grateful for my coffee not being cold, right? It's just like, I appreciate that. And just writing out a list.
Yes. Oh.
So 2 tools. I kept it down to 2.
No, I love it. I love it because, one, I am the mom that I have double booked therapies before. Because I wrote it down on my digital calendar, or plugged it into my digital calendar. And then I saw my physical calendar and I didn't have it there. And I was just like, oh no, it's if you know someone who is a direct caregiver, you might think you know, but you don't know what's going on in our head. There's so many things going on. And then the grateful, that's just, maybe you said it. It's like, it's about practicing, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Our brains are hardwired to see the negatives. It's called negativity bias.
Okay.
So that is just like our natural state, is we're only going to see the negative parts of life. Like our brains are going to point that stuff out and tend to really just ignore the good stuff. So you have to be very intentional about showing your brain like, hey, it's not all bad. Right? Like, yes, we do have hard things. Yes, there is a lot of, really bad things that we have to deal with. But the more and more we can help show our brain like, hey, there is still some good, it can really lift your mood.
Yes. And is this what you do now full time? Lauren, you take care, obviously being a mom is full time, but I feel being a mom of a special needs kid, it's like a double full-time. And then you do this on the side as full-time as well?
Yes, I do.
Wow. And so if anyone listening to our podcast would like to sign up to your services or look you up, how do they find you?
Yeah, they can either go to Instagram or Facebook and send me a message. I respond to all my messages as quick as I can, at least. But I also have a website. It's just LoweryLifeCoaching.com. And I've got all kinds of fun things on there, and the podcast, and yeah.
Yes, I do have 2 more questions, and I love ending with this question is sometimes, not sometimes, some of our listeners are not the direct caregivers or the parents. They are grandpas, uncles, sometimes even nieces if they're old enough, and their cousin is the one affected. And they're learning, they're listening to this podcast to really understand how they can help and how they can continue to educate themselves. So what kind of advice would you share to them when they know that their caregiver or the direct family is impacted and overwhelmed? And where do they come in? Like, how can they show up and be there? Like, what are the ways? Because every caregiver is different. So I would love to hear your advice that you would have to give to someone who's not the direct caregiver, but knows directly the family impacted.
Yes, I love this question. I think you said it perfectly, that every caregiver is different, right? But I know something that I would suggest is just like an overall thing is, don't say, I'm here if you need me, or how can I help? Because our brains, especially whenever you're in the thick of it and you are in that chronic stress, chronic state of survival mode, our brains are not able to access the thinking part of our brains, the cognition part that allows us to say, oh, these following tasks you can help me with. right? Like, we're not able to do that. So just saying instead, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to mow your lawn. What would be a good day for me to come do it? Giving specific help.
Yes, I like that one. I could use that. You have not seen my backyard. I could use that. And it is, I mean, I can definitely tell that you've spoken to a lot of caregivers and parents, because everything you're saying I'm finding very, very relatable. And it's really hard to put a lot of things into words because there's a lot of emotions involved. And some of those emotions involved, they're not untangled for me. They're all just like bottled up inside, and it's conflicting. It's conflicting trying to live every day to day and trying to get things done and function. So everything you're telling me, like to stay organized, I'm just like, I know I'm trying, Lauren, I'm trying. stay organized, and the binder, and then the thoughtfulness every day, and what you're telling our caregivers. You're on point. That's why you're here today.
Well, like I said, I do this full time. So I talk to moms like us literally every single day. Some days, most days, or all day, you know?
Yes. And, this is kind of like a very open-ended question, but I absolutely love it. If you could go back in time and now with your experience, give yourself advice to newly diagnosed mom Lauren, because I'm only on 1.5 years, or myself, what would you tell those newly diagnosed parents, those maybe that just received the news? Oh, it's so hard. Those received the news, just 2 weeks ago, and they're just Googling and trying to figure things out. Or just even 6 months ago, that 6 months sometimes feels like you just received the news yesterday. That's how it felt like for me. What kind of advice or words of wisdom or kind messages would you give to them, or to past Lauren?
Yeah. Oh, that's a heavy question. And so, I mean, it's such a good question, though, because there's so much I want to go back and tell my past self, right?
I bet you would hug her so hard.
I would. And the main thing I would tell her is that I'm going to cry thinking about it. I guess something along the lines of like, if you only have 30% of yourself to give, and you give that 30%, then you gave 100%, right? Because that is just, I was constantly trying to do more. I thought that, I needed to do more research. Also, stay off Google. Take everything you read on Google with a grain of salt. But, I was constantly researching, trying to find something almost to save my child. Something that was going to help him be okay so that I could feel better, right? And I was wearing myself out. I was burning myself out, just trying to do more and feeling bad for not doing enough and not allowing myself time to just process and give myself grace. It's okay to don't try to be perfect. Don't try to be a super mom, because you're just going to set yourself up for, a lot of extra stress and a lot of pressure. And, we're already great moms. We are. We don't have to go try to do it all and find every piece of research and, go to every single, we need to go to the doctor's appointments, right? We need to do that. Yes. But I was just throwing myself into everything versus just taking a step back and remembering, hey, I'm still just mom, not just caregiver.
You're still Lauren, even a step back from mom. You are Lauren, and you said it very early in the podcast. You were able to reflect and say, this is not me. And you were able to look at yourself and be like, what is going on? I need to start taking care of myself. And it's so hard when I say taking care of myself. I think now more than before, like emotionally and mentally, and just so many other aspects, and just the previous Betty before the diagnosis. I have another question for you, and you're more than welcome to say pass if you don't want it. I asked parents, but I think this is just, beautiful but heavy. And so if Leo or your husband could, they were listening to this podcast and could understand everything you're saying and everything that's thinking back on your journey, everything that's led to where you are today, I'm sure there were a key role, right, to helping you become the woman that you are today. What would you like them to know?
Oh,
I know.
So many things.
I know. It's just it's such a beautiful, messy story. So I love it.
Yeah, it's the grit and the grace, right?
Yes.
I would, to my husband, I could not have done any of this without him. I am very blessed, very lucky to have married the man I did. And he is just, I don't know. He is always, it's so cliche. He is my rock, right? But he's the one whenever I'm struggling and I'm, going down the rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, this is awful and this is horrible and this is going to happen, right? He kind of pulls me out of that and he grounds me and he brings me back to reality. And he is just does more for our family. I mean, I have a really bad back. Like I have back issues, which is not good whenever you have a 40+ pound child that can't even hold his head up, right? So my husband is just always there. I mean, I do very little lifting because he is around a lot and it's more than just lifting, right? He's just, I can't say enough good things. And what I would say to Leo, I say everything to Leo as it is. That boy probably is sick of me talking because I'm just constantly talking his ear off. But I would just tell him I'm proud of him. Because I am, it doesn't matter. I don't care what skills he ever has or what milestones he ever hits. It doesn't matter. That really doesn't to me anymore. And that's a weird realization, honestly. But I'm proud of him for just how amazing he is. He's fun and he's different in his own way and he's just so lovable.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I absolutely love ending our podcast and our conversation like this because if I think of my low times when I get the diagnosis or something, I need to see I'm looking for lights. I'm looking to see the happy moments from other families and I'm looking for inspiration and I'm looking for energy to be recharged. So when I hear from parents like you who are a little bit ahead of the journey and I know the day-to-day struggle and how hard it can be for the family too, even if you're putting your best foot forward every single time. But I hear, those words that the guest gives to the family, it just truly just makes my heart melt and it's recharging for me. And so I'm hoping that this is just as recharging for other families, especially on those times that are it's in the midst of the unknown.
Okay.
So, Lauren, thank you so much for coming to the podcast. It was not only inspirational, but you provided us with 2 great tools. And again, we're going to link everything down in the description box. And we're going to have your socials and your binder. And I love that you do provide with a lot of inspiration day to day on your Instagram and they can reach out directly to you. And for sharing your story, I think it's so beautiful, how far you have come, but how humble you are and just kind and just very considerate to everyone that's just starting this journey for the first time. So thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for having me and letting me share and share my message.